Hello everyone, this is part 16 of What If Naruto Was Reborn as a Shinigami, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Naruto nearly choked when Tenten's sword came a hair's breadth from his forehead, shaving off several blonde locks. He let himself fall backward and latched onto her sword with his chain, jerking her in the opposite direction she was spinning and knocking her off balance. He planted his hand on the ground and pinwheeled away as Tenten righted herself. He unsealed his hammer with a quick swipe and jammed the spikes into the ground, winding his chain around the hilt and stepping back into a taijutsu stance. Tenten leveled her sword and stared at him warily. What are you planning? Naruto grinned and pushed his foot out a bit further, a small mound of dirt building up in front of his sandal. If I told you, it wouldn't be much of a surprise now, would it? With a quick upward swipe of his foot, he kicked dirt in Tenten's face and lunged forward, grabbing at the hilt of her sword and jerking it from her grasp. His chain whipped forward and lashed itself around the feather-like sword, and dragged it back to rest against the hammer. Tenten brushed the dirt out of her eyes and growled at her soulmate. What the hell was that? We're supposed to fight with our weapons. Naruto shrugged and rushed forward, kicking and punching as he spoke. A fight is never fair, Ten-chan. I'm just utilizing what I can. Now come on. She whipped a kunai out of nowhere and leapt at him. He still hadn't figured out where she hid all the damn things. He'd never found any in their makeout sessions. Sanosuke and Jiraiya watched as the two sparred and came close several times to king each other. Jiraiya was amazed at the teen's ability and resiliency. They'd been traveling and training in the wilderness for over 3 months since Itachi had last visited them, and the two had grown by leaps and bounds in their adeptness with their respective weapons. Tenten was a natural with her feather. It was almost like the girl had been born with it in her hand. There wasn't much she couldn't do with it, even going so far as to try to drain Naruto's chakra with it, just to see how much he truly had on tap. The amount Keppaku ate was astounding, and the sword had said it wouldn't have to eat for a month afterward. Naruto was back on his feet the next day like nothing had happened. The girl could cut through just about anything with that soft-looking sword, and the only thing they'd found she couldn't tell was Naruto's hammer. But neither could he put a dent in her sword. They were unbreakable items, much like the two spirits. He winced when Tenten wrenched her sword free of the chain and lunged at Naruto, swinging the sword low, trying to chop at his ankles. Naruto dove over her swing and grabbed his hammer off the ground, spinning on the spot and lashing out, only to find Tenten wasn't there. He was about to stand when he felt a sharp point on the back of his and heard a husky voice next to his ear. I win. Naruto remained motionless, but grinned. I'd call it a tie, sweetie. Tenten narrowed her eyes and gasped when she felt a tap on her shoulder. Slowly, she turned her head to find his chain wiggling in midair, right behind her, aimed at her heart. With a sigh, she let off the pressure on his and stood upright, slinging the feather to her shoulder. You always ruin my victories with that stupid chain. Just once, I'd like to see you lose badly. Naruto chuckled as he knocked the dirt off his pants, before sealing his hammer away and bidding the chain to wind back around his waist. He stretched his arms out, his wings billowing out as well, and groaned in contentment at the feeling. Looking back toward her, he smirked and put his arms back at his side. I can't ruin a victory when you never have one against me. That's just the way it works. Tenten was about to say something when the sound of clapping hands broke through the air and they both turned to face the brown-haired angel. All right, you two, wrap it up. That's enough for today. The two nodded and made their way back over to the campsite where Jiraiya was busy cooking something over the fire. He looked up at the approaching ninjas and grunted. They'd come quite far in just a few months. He could only wonder when they'd face their first trial against the Akatsuki and who the members would be. Until then, he'd simply play the role of mentor and helper. Tenten looked on their campsite and sighed. It was sparse, just a pit for a fire, 2 tents, and a few logs for them to sit on. They changed sites once a week, but as long as Naruto was with her it felt like home to her. Sanosuke watched as the two put away the things for the day. It was almost dark and they'd been training all day, becoming more and more acclimated with their weapons each day. He was proud of their progress, but couldn't help but wonder whether they were ready for Itachi's comrades yet or not. They were getting better, but were they good enough? He closed his eyes and listened to the noises of the forest. The crickets chirping, the wind as it whistled through the trees, the mortal world was always alive. They'd gotten lucky with Kisame and Zetsu, especially Zetsu. If the man hadn't underestimated Naruto's chain, then he would have gotten clean away, and Itachi's deception would have been discovered. Yes, they'd been extremely lucky. But then, Naruto was always a lucky one. The members left now would be among the most powerful. Madara, Uchiha and Pain among them. Kami's chosen warrior would have to be a lot better, and so would his soulmate. Naruto flopped down in front of the fire and crossed his legs to sit Indian style, staring into the flames. He looked down when he felt a weight in his lap and saw Tenten looking up at him with her big brown eyes. Massage, now. Shoulders, and temples. He gave her a sour look, but began his ministrations, making the girl groan in pleasure when his hands began to rub hard on her shoulders. Jiraiya reached for his notepad stealthily until he heard Tenten's voice break across the small sight. Don't even think about it, pervert. I'm not being inspiration for one of your books. Jiraiya frowned and turned back around, perhaps appealing to her vanity. But Tenten, you're certainly beautiful enough to be inspiration. You've got one of the best boss I've ever seen. Why wouldn't you want it to be immortalized in literature and enjoyed by readers for generations? Naruto snickered and started to rub her en. He'd heard that sales pitch before. It usually worked on civilian women, they'd drop their panties in a second. Never let it be said that Jiraiya wasn't good at what he did. Kunoichis were a different breed though, and that was proven when Tenten opened one eye and glared at the old hermit. I'm already immortalized in the eyes of Naruto and he's the only one who's going to get to enjoy this body. Keep me out of your books. Jiraiya pouted but acquiesced and put his pen and paper away. He'd get her one day. Tenten settled back into her relaxing routine, enjoying Naruto's scared hands that seemed to know exactly where they needed to be. Her eyes began to flutter and she wiggled around until she became more comfortable, completely at ease with their post-training activity. Tenten remembered back over the months of their training to when she and Naruto had first clashed their respective weapons together. It had been exhilarating and fun. But what had tickled her to death was when Naruto met Keppuku face to face one night in their sleep. Naruto spun round and round the cloud-filled world, totally entranced by the whiteness of everything. He turned to Tenten, who sat with one leg over the other on a cloud bank, wearing a pink Chinese-style dress up both legs, and blinked rapidly. She looked so beautiful. He shook his head to clear himself of such impure thoughts in this pure world and asked where they were. He knew that they had just gone to sleep and that they had been inside their tent, so where the hell were they now? Tenten giggled and swung her feet to the ground. We're in the world of Keppuku. She wanted to meet you, sweet corn. Naruto quirked an eyebrow and frowned at his girlfriend. He looked away and around at his surroundings again. That's a really weird pet name, Ten-chan. Now where exactly are we? She walked over to him, swinging her hips as she walked and grabbed his arm in hers, leaning against his side. I told you, we're in Keppuku's world. My sword would like to meet you, and she's the one who says you taste like sweet corn. Naruto looked around again, still not seeing anything but white clouds. So, where is your sword then? I'm behind you. Naruto whirled around to face the childish voice only to find a very short-robed figure. He didn't see any sword around. He knelt down to eye level with the figure and smiled. Hello there, little one. Do you know where to find a sword named Keppuku? She wanted to meet me and I'd like to meet her. The small figure pulled its hood down and looked at him with her cherubic face, a large smile in place. She wanted to meet you. Why, you don't seem like a very interesting person. Naruto scowled and cut his eyes at Tenten when she put her hand over her mouth and began to giggle. He sighed and turned back around to the brightly smiling little girl with his eyes closed. Well, I may not be very interesting, but my girlfriend says that her sword wants to meet me. Do you know where she is? When he received no reply, he opened his eyes to find she wasn't there. He opened his eyes wider and started to turn only to shudder when someone rubbed his wings. Tenten watched with barely veiled amusement as the little girl rubbed all over Naruto's wings. They're so soft and fluffy. Maybe you are interesting after all. The little cherub looked up at Tenten with a mischievous grin. Can I keep him? Tenten glared at the manifestation of her sword and wrenched the small figure away from Naruto before latching herself onto him. I've already told you he's mine, Keppuku. Hands off. But he's so fluffy, like a kitty. Don't be an angel hog. Share the wealth. Tenten bopped her sword on the head and the two glared at each other. He's mine and I don't want to share. Find your own man. The little girl got right in Tenten's face, poking her in the chest. I'm a sword. How am I supposed to find a man? A sharp cough from behind them caused them both to turn and face a flustered Naruto, his wings folded behind him. I am right here, you know. And I don't enjoy being treated like a prize at the carnival. Now, Keppuku, I believe it was, what did you want to meet me for? The little girl put her finger to her chin and thought for a moment before a light seemed to come on in her head. Oh yeah, I just wanted to meet you face to face since we've met before in passing. My name is Keppuku, nice to meet you. Naruto stared at the smiling face and then down to her outstretched hand. This wasn't what he was expecting of an ancient weapon. It seemed so childish and innocent. He carefully reached his hand out and grasped hers before jerking it back as the cherub's face became blissful. She licked her lips and mewed. Sweet corn. Tenten grabbed the little girl by the collar of her cloak and hauled her up to eye level. You told me that you wouldn't eat any of his chakra. The sword had the good grace to look embarrassed and rubbed her toes together. But he tastes so good, I couldn't help myself. You can understand that, right? Perhaps, but next time ask before you do that. Naruto coughed into his hand again and put on a smile. I don't mind you doing it as long as you ask. It felt weird. Keppuku smiled and grasped onto his hand without draining his energy and began to pull him along. I won't do it next time without permission. Now come on, I got lots to show you. By the end of the dream session, Keppuku knew everything about Naruto and he knew everything about her, from her earliest memories, or what she could remember, to what her favorite color was, blood red, big surprise. Tenten had sat by idly as the two talked, placated by the fact that her back was rubbed constantly by her soulmate. Naruto had asked if his weapon had a spirit as well and was informed that his hammer did not, but his chain did. And that if he wanted to talk to it, it would take much coaxing. The chain might never speak to him, if it saw no need for it. They seemed to work well enough together without meeting, after all. They'd left Keppuku standing as she waved to them and returned to the waking world. Their eyes had both fluttered open at the same time and Tenten had turned away from him, before looking over her shoulder. I want a back rub. Tenten groaned unhappily when he tapped her on the forehead, their signal that supper was now ready. Naruto helped her sit upright and she leaned against him sleepily while Jiraiya doled out their food. She perked up slightly when the men started talking. Naruto rolled his shoulders and flexed his wings, brushing one against Tenten's arm. She shuddered at the contact. She loved those wings. So listen you two, how are we going to proceed with training? We've done nothing but weapons training for 3 months and, if I do say so myself, we're pretty damn good. We haven't seen hide nor hair of the Akatsuki and I'm starting to wonder if Itachi was caught. He trained his vision on Sanosuke and the angel tilted an eyebrow. What? Naruto inhaled and exhaled slowly. This had been more than 3 months in the making. I want to learn to fly. I have wings, I should be able to fly. Sanosuke crossed his arms and nodded his head. This had been a long time coming. I agree. You should learn to fly. That's where Jiraiya comes in. The white-haired man snapped his head in the direction of the angel. What's where I come in? Sanosuke leaned back against the log he had been sitting on and crossed his legs. I'm not a ninja. I don't know how to do elemental manipulation. I don't need it. You know how to teach him to use his wind affinity. He has too much weight to just take off from the ground like a bird. And there usually isn't enough running room to get started or enough high ground. So he's going to have to learn to use his wind affinity to catapult himself into the air. If he can learn that, then he can fly from anywhere. Naruto looked absolutely hungry at the opportunity to learn something new. He had to know how to fly. It didn't make sense to have wings and not be able to utilize them fully. He turned to Jiraiya and gave the man a pleading look. Jiraiya sighed and folded his arms. He had promised to help the boy, but he didn't have a wind affinity. It would be like trying to teach a lead weight how to swim. I can try, but I have an earth affinity. It's not the same. Naruto frowned and hung his head. This wasn't going to be easy. Tenten rubbed his arm consolingly, trying to cheer him up. Jiraiya wasn't through yet though. But, we could go to Suna. They have tons of wind uses. I believe that Temari girl is a wind mistress. Naruto's face brightened and he wrapped Tenten in a huge hug, his wings folding around the two so Jiraiya and Sanosuke couldn't see the deep kiss he gave her, not that the pleasant ming and squeaking noises she was making gave any other impression. Jiraiya frowned and called out to the two. You know, the least you could do is let me watch. I am trying to help you after all. Tenten pried her lips off Naruto's for a mere second, caught her breath, and growled over the wing barricade. You just want tips on how to actually treat a lady. I'm not helping you out. And neither is Naruto. Jiraiya grunted and shoveled his food into his mouth as Sanosuke watched with an amused grin. You know, I know you're a good man at heart, Jiraiya, and you know how to treat a woman right. Why do you insist on being so perverted? You could have had a happy relationship with Tsunade or some other woman. Jiraiya looked up and sighed. I've just never been the settling down type. Yes, I could have been happy with Tsunade, but would she have been happy with me? I know how to treat a lady right, but I just don't know if I could have treated her how she deserved to be treated. They're all different and want different things. It's much easier to be the man who walked away, that they remember as being in his prime, than to stay and grow old and wrinkled with someone. I guess, I'm just born to be a loner, Sarutobi-sensei. Sanosuke's eyes widened and he looked at Jiraiya curiously. What did you call me? Jiraiya looked embarrassed and rubbed the back of his head as he looked away. I'm sorry. It's just, you remind me of Sarutobi-sensei with the way you act and talk sometimes. The two of you are very similar. Too similar, sometimes. Jiraiya looked hard at the angel and squinted his eyes. The resemblances were uncanny, but, it couldn't be his sensei. He shrugged and shoveled the last of his food in his mouth. Forgive me. It was just the musings of a wistful middle-aged man. Sanosuke sighed as the two lovebirds emerged from their little make-out fest, blushing. He stood from where he had been lying and addressed them all. Get ready tomorrow. We'll move out for Suna to begin your training in flight. I'll see you in the morning. The angel disappeared into the night and Naruto yawned as he stood before heading for his and Tenten's tent. Night Ero Sennen. Tenten, come to bed when you're ready. Jiraiya grunted and waved him off before turning back to the fire. He began to get lost in his thoughts until he finally felt Tenten training her eyes on him. He glanced at her and blinked slowly. Anything I can help you with? Or have you finally decided to give in to the wiles of the great Jiraiya-sama? Tenten wrinkled her nose at the suggestion and glared at the man. She might have come to begrudgingly respect him over the time she had spent with him, but he was still a lecher. No, actually. I just wanted to know if you could teach me any of your dotonjutsus to kind of supplement my training. Jiraiya shook his head and sighed. He hated to deny a pretty girl anything, but he'd have to now. I'm sorry, Tenten, but you just don't have the chakra capacity for any of my dotonjutsus. We'll try to work on that though while we're traveling. I know of a few ways to enhance chakra levels, but women usually have lower levels naturally. We'll just have to work at it until we get you up to a higher capacity. Tenten nodded and stood up to enter her tent. As she reached the flap, she turned to Jiraiya and smiled. You should try to be less of a lecher and more of the good man we know you can be. You'd be a lot happier. She ducked inside the flap, leaving a bewildered Jiraiya. He slid off his log and lay on his back, looking up at the stars, pondering on what had been said. Why in the hell is everyone interested in my love life all of a sudden? Is a relationship really all that great? Maybe. Look at those two kids, after all. Look at how Minato and Kushina were, just like Naruto and Tenten, so happy. I think those two have just given me a bit of inspiration for my next story. He whipped his notepad out and scribbled furiously. This next story might appeal to both genders and he'd make even more money and be more famous. And all it took was some non-nudie encouragement. Tenten panted as they walked across the desert. She kept wondering why in the hell someone would make their home in the middle of a sandbox that baked at 400 degrees. Her only saving grace was she was allowed to walk beside Naruto, whose wings were splayed out, protecting both her and him from the sun's rays. The boy was panting as hard as her though. Those wings couldn't block everything. Sanosuke and Jiraiya walked as if nothing was wrong. Sanosuke they could understand, but Jiraiya was a real brain buster. When Tenten asked him how he was keeping cool, he smirked and told her he was always cool. She didn't have enough energy to retaliate and retreated back under Naruto's wings. They sighed in happy contentment as the silhouette of Suna came into view. They'd never been happier to see that hunk of rock in all their lives. Tenten wanted to get a hotel room immediately and have her first hot shower in weeks. Sansuke, Jiraiya, and Naruto wanted to find the Sand siblings first and ask for their assistance. Tenten ended that argument when she grabbed Naruto by the collar and jerked him down to her eye level. She was hot, she was sweaty, she was tired, and damn it all, she wanted to relax with him. You and I are getting a room. We're both going to take a shower together. I'm going to wash you, you're going to wash me. Private and fun times will ensue that you and I will enjoy. Once I am satisfied with our current state of undress and cleanliness, we are going to sleep in a real bed and you will hold me while I enjoy some cool air for once while I sleep. We will seek out Temari in the morning. Understood. Naruto gulped and nodded quickly as he was dragged into the city. He halted before they got too far though and told them to wait. He hadn't gotten a chance to test this before in a city. I'm going to attempt to hide my wings before bed for once. Let's see if all my training and meditation has paid off. They watched as he closed his eyes and beads of sweat formed on his brow from concentration. Little by little, his wings receded until they were gone into the familiar tattoos on his back. Naruto panted a little and let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He smiled when he felt Tenten rub his back and knew he had succeeded. There, at least we won't be stared at as much now. This'll make it much easier to move about. And we can get Ten-chan her hotel room. The girl smiled and took his arm, the two leading the way into the city. Jiraiya scowled and turned to Sanosuke. This wasn't a vacation and he wanted to get things moving. He had begun to teach Tenten some tricks to increasing her chakra capacity, like walking on top of the sand instead of sinking in, but she had decided shade was more valuable. He was going to have to get tougher on the two. I'll go find the Kazekage and then find a room for myself. I assume you'll know where to find the three of us when needed. Sanosuke nodded his head and spoke up before he left. Be careful. They've been quiet for too long and I believe they will strike soon. There are a few left in that organization that aren't natural and will need Naruto and Tenten's skill and power to rid the world of. I only hope they'll be ready. Jiraiya turned on his heel and walked off toward the tall tower in the center of the village. He waved over his shoulder, not bothering to see if the angel was gone or not. Staring straight ahead, he whispered to himself. I hope they're ready too. Kami, I hope they're ready. Quote. The sound of de-sping water was all that could be heard as the three figures stood in the chamber. It was becoming a ritual of the three, to stand before each other and have an inquisition. It was, in Itachi's eyes, becoming quite annoying. So, Itachi, do you know where they are now? Itachi nodded and bowed to Madara and Pain. He was getting tired of the two postponing going after Naruto. He hated to wait for a challenge. Although, the more time the boy had, the better he would be. Yes, he is currently in Suna, visiting the Kazekage. Jiraiya is with him, as is the brown-haired girl that kissed him and I used to lure him out at one time. Pain stared at the Uchiha with his Rinnegan eyes, looking for deception. He found none, but Itachi was crafty. He wouldn't let the man go alone. We want you to attempt to take the boy again. Take Deidara with you and this time, don't come back without the boy. If you fail again, I will kill you. Madara glared at Pain and rose from his seat. He would handle this himself. There is no reason to send Itachi. I will go myself and see what this Uzumaki is capable of. He slipped on his orange spiral mask and got into character. How he hated to pretend to be this hapless buffoon. Toby will accompany Deidara-senpai to face the kid. Toby is a good boy. Pain bowed and crept back into the shadows. Itachi stood resolutely, not caring one way or the other. The end result would be the same. Deidara would and hopefully, Madara with him. He wasn't that optimistic though. He knew that the clay user would perish this time though. Not that he believed the man to be incapable of putting up a fight, but Naruto had come far. He wouldn't be the pushover the long-haired blonde had faced before. Toby hopes this will be a good fight. Toby's been bored lately. Madara frowned from behind his mask as Deidara appeared in the chamber. His immortality was becoming more a curse than a blessing. Oh, so bored. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.